All right, good morning. I'm CJ, the Catholic Family Podcast, and for Kevin today, and we are here with Logan Jackson, and he is going to tell us about his journey from Protestantism to the Novus Ordo to the Catholic Church. Morning, Logan.
Good morning, CJ.
So you're telling me you started out raised in various Protestant denominations, right?
Yes, yeah, I was raised in Southern Baptist because I live in the state of Georgia. So most of the denominations here, especially in the area I'm in the West Georgia area, is mostly Protestant. So I was raised in a Southern Baptist church. And my grandparents had been going to the same church for all their life and their parents. So it's kind of like I went to a family church. So I was raised in that, and probably until I left for college. But I went to a couple of different colleges. And, I graduated high school in 98. And like any person, it was away to school, you kind of fall away from the church, or I fell away from the church. And really didn't attend church for years. I mean, I still believe. I mean, that was never any doubt. I still believe. I still pray. I just didn't attend church.
You're kind of able to fool yourself though when you're like away from it all.
Right. Yeah. And and really, I hate to say this, but in the churches I was going to, is kind of like, if you can't make it, just try to read your Bible and pray. But obviously they wanted you to come, but it wasn't really a huge push. Well, and also in this denomination, we were taught once saved, always saved. So, and that was, okay, so if I'm saved, then there's nothing I can do. If I don't go to church, then there's still nothing that's going to cause me to be sent to hell. So I was like, okay, well, I was saved and baptized. So I thought, well, this is me pushing myself. Because I was new into college. I was trying to figure everything out. It was a new kind of life. And I would say I was too tired. I would wake up, but I just didn't feel like going to church. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I would probably get up enough time to go. I just couldn't get the motivation to go.
I've always been curious because I just kind of hear it from an outsider's perspective, but was it like more like an implicit or an explicit thing with the kind of attitude towards the once saved, always saved, like where they like didn't worry about somebody even if they started kind of falling into bad habits or anything? They believe that, or was that?
Well, okay, so it depends. So different denominations would do different things. Some people would say that you were probably never truly saved if you were doing that.
Okay, I've heard that, yeah.
But then I would ask, well, then how can you question their salvation, because you can't know? But then they would bring up the verse, you would know them by their fruits. And I'm like, well, that goes for ministers too. So how do I know if a minister is truly saved if his actions are speaking? They're like, well, if he's a minister, he obviously is. And like what you just said, you wouldn't know them by their fruits. But if there's a minister who maybe, is, because we didn't believe in drinking. I was like, if I see a minister at a function and he's drinking, we teach that is not allowed. And you said the Bible does not allow that. So it was kind of like then they would say, well, God wouldn't have called him if he wasn't. So it's one of those things that they would just put it back on God. They would never really answer the question.
All right. Thank you. I was just curious.
No, yeah. I mean, no, it's a great question. Yeah, because a lot of people, if they wasn't raised Protestant, they really don't understand the whole Sola-Scriptura and the once saved, always saved, and that's how I was raised. I mean, it was nothing for me to hear that. And, and again, fell away, and then ended up leaving that college and then took a couple of years off. Just worked odd man jobs. I would go to church often, off and on. I would attend because at that time I was still young, so I'd probably go to North Point, which is here in Atlanta. It was where it's called 727. I don't know if you know Lou Biglio, the Protestant side. So he's a really famous and large evangelist here in the city of Atlanta. He's known worldwide. So there'd be thousands of college-age kids meeting on a Thursday night for church. So I would do that occasionally. The most time I would work, I was a server. I was really got in the wrong crowd, let's say, for part of it, started drinking, potentially got on drugs for a while, but was off of that. And then that whole scenario, I was able to, it wasn't very hard at the time. But yeah, so was still, thinking I was, safe, thinking I was doing good, thinking I was a good Christian. But you can really make yourself believe anything. And you really can make the scripture say anything you want to say. Because you can find any scripture that will agree with what you're doing. Now, you can make it, but I'm going to say you have to take it out of context to make it say it. So you have to read into it. And a lot of times I would do that. I would read into the scriptures what I wanted to say and what I wanted to get from them. I'm thinking in 2000, this is probably from 99 to 2002, just off and on. But 2003, I decided to go back to school. So here in Georgia, so I was part of the Baptist Association. So that time we had 3 Baptist colleges. 2 were 2-year schools and 1 was a university. So I applied there, and if you go there and you're a Baptist member of a Baptist church, you get like $1,000 a year, just because of your affiliation in the Southern Baptist Church. So I did that I was there for a year and a half, and the school I went to was Truett McConnell College. At the time, it was a very small college. I think there's probably 300 of us, maybe 300 or 400. It wasn't large. It was big enough that we all knew each other. It was small enough we all knew each other. And so I did that, it was great. We had some work, and there you were required to go to chapel, I think twice a quarter. We had chapel twice a quarter. But during a couple of weeks, we'd have it for a full week, which we call, so there, if you go to a Christian school, I don't know if this is the same with Catholics, but sometimes when you go to a Christian school, you get enough Bible through the week that you don't feel like Sunday you need to go to church, because you sat through an Old Testament class, and probably a New Testament class, and probably something else. So you get that all week. We also had what we called hall meetings, where once a week we would meet with a group of guys or girls, depending on what sex you were. We would meet there. So it's kind of like on Sundays, we would go to church, but it was kind of one of those things where if we didn't feel bad, because we had classes throughout the week. When you go to chapel once a week, you do Bible classes. I would go to church, but it would be maybe not every Sunday, maybe every other Sunday. I was part of one church that I like to go visit, because there were a number of churches that my friends would go to, so I'd go with them some Sundays. But I belonged to a church that I could walk to. I think it was First Baptist Belton, because that's where the university was. Well, I ended up getting really discouraged, feeling really down, and just quit school in 2004 again. Lived in the area there, Temple, Belton area, if anybody's familiar with Texas. Central Texas is close to Waco, in between Waco and Austin. So I would, really fell back into the partying. I got a job in serving in a restaurant, and if anybody's done it, it's not a very Christian profession. I'm not saying people that are Christian that work there, but I'm just saying that it's so hard, because a lot of people there are usually, drinking or drugs because of the stress you go through, and because of the tiredness that you feel. You have to do something. Because sometimes you're working 12-hour days and you're only making $2.50 an hour plus whatever tips you make. So I did that, probably for a year. And then I moved back home in 2006, because I just had found out my great uncle was diagnosed with bone cancer. Sorry, 2005. We just found out my uncle was diagnosed with bone cancer. So we wouldn't sure if he was going to make it. So I decided to come home with my family during this time, but he ended up, making it for a while. He actually lived 2 more years. So I went there in 2007. I decided in 2006, I started online. But I wanted to finish my degree, and I felt the Lord pushing. So I applied and started Liberty University online in 2006. But in 2007, I moved there. And this is kind of still obviously Baptist school, very conservative, very very conservative. Jerry Falwell, the founder, was part of the Mormon majority during the Reagan administration. He, believed like on campus there was we had to go by a handbook, so we had what's called a Liberty Way. So what that did is it took everything from how we interpret the Bible, like no drinking, no immodest dressing, no girls and guys in the same room. Girls do not go to the guys' dorms, guys can go to the girls' dorms, unless it was a event that will allow it, which they had on every now and then. So it's very strict, or it was when I started, I'll say that. Now, and we had chapel 3 times a week, and then we would have Wednesday night church as well. So we'd have chapel on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Wednesday night. So, and you were required. If you didn't go, and you got caught, you got fined for not going. Like, well, I'll just go, this is my tithe then, so therefore you can take it, and I'll just go somewhere else. But I lived off campus, so on campus wasn't required unless you were on campus. But my first 2 years, I went every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because we had some really good speakers, really, at the time, they were really great speakers, and they'd also bring in politicians. But I got to thinking, really, there were some things there that I started thinking in my sophomore year. So 0809, I don't know, I just started questioning a lot of things. I took a class also called, I think it was World Religions. So in world religions, you had Islam, Judaism, Catholicism, and something else. There were 4 major religions that we had. And I did pretty good until we got to the Catholic Church. And then I started questioning things because I would read things. I wish I had my notes from that then. Probably shredding things after that class. But but yeah, it was just some things like what they would say about Mary, I would disagree with. And I would catch myself disagreeing. And I'm like, and then I would do okay, and then I would do the whole argument in my head thing that I didn't say out loud because that was really crazy, but I was battling with it in my head. Yes. But what's interesting too, though, and I forgot to mention this, back in my first school, I was in choir. I was actually the stage director. Well, on Christmas, we had a Christmas thing, and one of the songs that was sang was Ave Maria. Well, and so this was it was a public school, so it wasn't a private school, it wasn't Christian, it was just they did Ave Maria. And actually, one of my cousins actually sang it, has a beautiful opera voice. It's beautiful. And it's sad because I still actually have the video from that footage, and I'll watch it. It's VHS, but I'll watch it because I think that was, I look back at that time in that class to that song, because I looked at the lyrics. And obviously it's in Latin, so I had to translate it. And I just read the lyrics of it, and something that spoke to me. I don't know what it was. Or at the time I didn't know what it was, but I kept going back to that song in this class. Like, that's actually one of my favorite. When I was Protestant, that was one of my favorite songs of all time. I listen to it every Christmas. I would listen to it so much my friends would get tired of listening to it and tell me to cut it off. We know the song by heart. I'm like, yeah, but it's good. So there was that. But then they started talking about how Catholics would worship idols like Mary and saints and everything else. And I was like, okay, so my religious class, right? And they also would talk about how, well, and they would say, well, the teacher would say that the Pope is really, that the Catholics have to follow everything the Pope says. And I'm like, well, I know some really bad Catholics, dude, because at the time, so I think at the time it had to be Benedict the 16th. Oh wait, yes, because John Paul II died when I was at the school in Texas. And I kid you not, we all watched the funeral. Did you see Baptist people watching the Pope's funeral? Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I don't know. But so they just started doing that, and now just got to thinking. I'm like, I don't think the Pope is any more than our president of the Baptist Convention. I just think he's the head of the church, just like our president is the head of our association. You know, so I had maybe a misconception of what a pope was. But for me, I would say, well, for me, and I would raise my hand and say, well, for me, the Pope himself, if I'm correct, I figure he is because you said he was the Bishop of Rome. So if he's the Bishop of Rome and he's also the Pope, then he also would be the highest bishop in with them, because we still believe in bishops. And I said, well, for me, it seems like he's the highest bishop, but he's still, because they would listen to him for guidance, just like we would listen to, you know, our you know, I forgot who was the president at the time. We would listen to him for guidance on how we need to live our lives. And because he was also, to be president, you had to be a pastor of the association. So yeah, so that, you know, that did it. And you know, I don't know, it just kept bothering me. It just kept bothering me and things of that nature. And but then, you know, the class was over. I think it was really good. And again, I talked to the professor afterwards, and we were just trying to talk back. But he also, I didn't get a ticket, I would sit in, but he didn't talk to class just on Catholicism itself. It was a semester class on Catholicism. And I sat in on a couple of them, but it wasn't really in depth because I would just come in every now and then. But so this leads me to 2008. So 2009, 2008, 8 and 9 is when I met my best friend. Well, let's do it with my best friends. They were both from northern states, like one was from New York, one was from Michigan. They both were hockey. I never watched hockey, but became friends with them, and they invited me, so I went to hockey when they had it. But one of the friends was actually Catholic. Well, no, I guess I'd say Novus Ordo Catholic. And so we would talk a lot, and you know, because he would see that I was struggling and questioning, and I would always ask him questions, you know, about his faith. I never judged anybody. I didn't have a hard feeling about Catholics. One of my cousins was actually Catholic and had a Catholic funeral, so my mom and my grandmother were familiar. So our family never bashed Catholics. We would never say they were going to hell or whatever, but there'd be other people that I knew that'd be like the level 4 of Babylon, and like, well, I don't see them doing any different than we, so I don't really understand that. But in 2011, so this was my last year, I did a class really where I looked in more. I did a class called Cult. But what I would do is when I got through studying my cult, I would go and study more of Catholicism. I would just look up some stuff, and my favorite show was I loved, and I still try to go back and watch it, but I love Mother Angelica, because she would tell it like it is. She didn't hold back. If you were doing wrong, she would call you out on live television. Like, who does that? But I would, you know, because usually at that time, all we had was TBN, was Trinity Broadcasting Network, and Daystar. Well, those two stations were more the prosperity gospel. They believed, you know, if you know, you give this, we always call, and this is going to be something awful, but my friends and all would always say, blab it and grab it for their theology. You would say what you wanted, and God would send it to you. So we would always say the blab it and grab it theory.
I never heard that. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Well, as Protestants, we had some really, really unique words. So, and it was, but yeah, so we had that. So really, the only station we'd have that would be on all night would sometimes be that had anything worth watching would be the Catholic channel, EWTN. So I got to watching that because I was like, okay, well, they're talking about the Bible, so it can't be that bad. But Mother Angelica would come on, and it was just something about her. It wasn't like in her older years, her younger years. You know, they did her younger years, and they got her to when she was older. And it was just something about, it was something that I had about her that I'd never seen in any of my fellow Christians, like my fellow Baptists. It was just, you could really, for me, I could see a glow. I could see something that she had that I didn't see anywhere else. So, okay, well, I was like, okay, well, I just pushed it off because at the time I was like, there's no way I can become Catholic. There's no way I can do that. But I loved it. I loved watching it. And I would, you know, so finally, you know, come graduation time, I finally graduated and stayed there another year because my best friends were graduating the next year, or one of them wanted to transfer the next year. One more year. to watch them play in their final games for hockey. So I did. So, but I would say it was probably around 2011, 2012. Just graduated, but I would eat with my friend that was Catholic from Michigan, and we would just sit and talk because he would talk to me, and he is one. If I had to say one that I thought was a true Catholic and true Christian in the Novus Ordo, it would be him. He loved his faith. He loved the Lord. He loved the Blessed Mother. And it was just something about him that I truly, truly could see was authentic. The sad thing was, is he was probably one of 3 Catholics at the school at the time. Well, he would get ridiculed or he would get talked down to, which I would, usually say, I believe the Bible says, judge not lest you be judged. So you're judging people, and because, Protestants know the Bible back and forth because we're trained in it, from kids until through college. You memorize scripture verses. You may not know really the verse it said, but you know what the verse says. But talking with him, I was having a hard time because I didn't really know where to go. Because I was coming back home, I didn't want to be part really of the Baptist church, but I ended up going to a Baptist church for a while before I found another one. But I then became Presbyterian. And this is in 2012. I moved back home. He had talked to me again about the faith, and he would just tell me that the Catholic Church was the true faith, and and he would line up, and he had facts, he had dates, he had things that he could show me, which again planted a seed. But I left and would move back home and started going to a church. It was they call themselves a non-denominational church, but on the sign it said Southern Baptist Church. So I was a little bit confused that time what it was. I think they were too at some points. But with there, probably for a year, well, maybe a year, or less, because I was in a youth group. It was a life group with just young adults. We would meet every Friday night. But it became a time when I got very hurt in the church. Something was said to me, and I didn't feel it was very Christian-like or should have been said, and it was never apologized. And I just left. I didn't if I'm not wanted here, then I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be where I'm not wanted. So I started going to the Presbyterian Church, which is the PCC USA. I'm not for sure if you know the difference. So PCC USA is the liberal side of the Presbyterian Church. So I started going there, and yes, we had a woman pastor, and yes, we had 2 lesbians as elders. Should have been my first one assigned, but obviously I was not in that whole reading thing. But she was great. I mean, I enjoyed her, enjoyed her sermons, and I was like, who am I to judge if the Lord calls a woman? Again, this was in my Protestant thinking. I had not even started thinking Catholic. But it was that year, 2013. I know it was actually around Christmas, because that was the year that the PCUSA had their press meeting. They had their meeting for their voters. And at that meeting, they decided to allow for same-sex marriage. But the minister, if he or she was gay or lesbian, could not marry themselves, but they could marry people. Well, first of all, I questioned a lot of that. I was like, well, that's just hypocritical. And I don't understand, if you're going to allow them to marry a couple, then why can't they marry? It didn't make any sense. But then something else came up, I don't remember what it was, but I remember calling my best friend who was in Michigan. He actually I had graduated by now, and told him, you know what, I have been thinking about the Catholic Church. Can you show me how? I really need to get away from the church that I'm in. And we talked probably about 3 hours. He talked me through the Catholic faith. And then he turned me on to, I started reading all of Scott Hahn's books. I started watching EWTN on Monday nights, listening to I was with Wayne, Mr. Grodot, The Journey Home. But what I did find was being Presbyterian and reading Rome Sweet Home, seeing that Scott Hahn was a Presbyterian, he broke it down for me in a Presbyterian mindset, why he became Catholic. So I think that's what I needed. And, I never questioned it, but the Lord always knows what we need when we need it. Um, so at that time I had missed RCIA there at my home. But I had recently gotten a job anyway, so I was going to be moving to Texas in April of 2014. So now in 2014, I moved to Texas. I had already got in touch with the parish, didn't know anybody and it's funny, because I never thought back, but I'm thinking about it now. I actually started to that church on Easter Sunday, like I started the mission here on Easter Sunday. So Easter Sunday of 2014, I happened just to go and visit a church, St. Rita's in Dallas. Love the church. It has great ministers. And the Lord placed me beside a woman who was one of the directors for RCIA. We got to talking about me trying to get into RCIA and do all sorts of things. And she goes, that's funny that the Lord said you, because I'm actually one of the directors and I actually helped do the RCIA. Out of everybody, this is a huge church. This is a church now of families of like 4,000 to 5,000. I mean, we're talking a huge church. So for me to sit with her was a sign for me. And so I did that. I went through RCIA. I loved it. We had Father Josh, which is now the administrator over the parish, who did the RCIA. So we had an actual priest to do it. But he was actually an Anglican who actually transferred over because of what Benedict did with the Anglicans. So he's married, and at that time he had 3 kids. I think he has 5 now. But he was really great. We went through. I literally still have all the material from that RCIA. It's actually right beside me. Because I would go back because of the readings it was church. It was actually some of the church, but it also had some of the saints. And that's why I kept it, because it had some of the saints. Well, Josh and I would meet. He would actually do it, but we'd meet also maybe over coffee or over, drinks at a local restaurant or something, just because I had other questions. That I just want to answer in just more of a clarification. Not really questions. I needed more of a clarification that I felt that if I asked in the class, I felt like it would be more of a snowball effect. So I asked to meet with him. He was great. He is really, really well educated, and was really, really willing and able to speak to me, to help me through, and everything of that nature. But yeah, so we went through that, and I loved it. A lot of people say they hated their RCIA, but I actually loved mine because, again, it was done with a priest that knew a lot about history, knew a lot about. I would say a lot about the faith as I look at it there. That's because remember, I'm still learning things. I don't really know anything, so I'm learning. So this is all new for me. But there would be, so we did that, and I think what we would also have, and what was really good about this is it wasn't just RCIA. It actually was a couple that actually would cook meals through RCIA. They would cook enough food for about 100 people. There was one couple, they had helpers, and they'll come back up later, but their names were Nike and Harold. They became, at the time I didn't know it, but they would come to become my second parents there in Texas. And I still talk to them to this day. But yeah, so we would get a time basically to eat together, and during that time we would catch up with people in our class. We had different tables we would sit at. And that was really good. You get to know people because they tried to make sure you knew somebody after you came to a church, but a lot of people did not come. We're not members of the church I was going to. They were actually, the Diocese of Dallas. It's the largest diocese in the U.S. right now. It's growing it's growing faster, or was at that time. So at that time, there was an RCIA program probably going every day of the week, in one parish or another. So you just had to fit. So a lot of people we'd have maybe another priest from another diocese, another church come in, another parish come in to speak. So this process was really good. And then we started getting to, I guess there were the sacraments, but I forget what they're called. But basically you go through that, and on Sundays, every Sunday you would come to church and you would hear the first part of the Mass until they got ready for communion, and then we would leave, and we would
Okay,
go
I've heard
out.
of some churches still kind of going back to that.
Yes,
The
so this church did. So you would leave, you'd go,
catechumen kind of liturgy of the word,
yeah,
and then you,
and then you leave when it's, I think it's partially, it started the Eucharistic process to start then. So,
yeah,
so we would go, and then we would talk about what we felt, whoever was speaking that day. We had four priests, so it could be any of them. What they spoke about and what the message was about. So that was really good. I thought that was really interesting for me. I learned a lot. Got to know a lot of people. But then, and then we would, continue to do that until right before Easter. And I was getting really excited and, came in. So this brought me into the church. So I came into the church in Novus Ordo Church in 2015, April 2015. I think it was April 7th to be exact, 2015. But yeah, so it was very interesting because obviously that the night you come in, you're first confirmed, or the night they have it, you have people who are getting baptized. So some people had me baptized, confirmed, and received communion. But I was just at that point, I was just baptized. I'm sorry, I was just confirmed and received communion. Now, everything was good. I mean, it was good for a while. I actually established that. So it was April and May. I established. So I chose, even though I shouldn't have, I know now, but that's all I could. At that time, I had, as my patron was a blessed. It was actually Blessed Giorgio Fossati. Was my, was who, I feel like he chose me rather than I chose him. But so in May of that year, I started a men's group, an all men's group. And it was called the Fossati Moon. So every Monday night, without miss, we would meet every Monday night. One of us would cook, so one of the guys would cook, or two of the guys. We had to cook it twice, so we would each take turns. So two guys would cook one night, two guys the next Monday night. So we'd eat together as men. We would actually then either do a rosary. Sometimes we do a rosary before or after, and then we would actually get into the word, or we would share kind of our stories. So each one of us, I believe before I left, there were, I don't think they had to do it now because of everybody's married now, but when I left, there were about 25 men who are meeting every Monday night. And this went on probably for 6 years. But I really started noticing a change within the church for me. I felt more like I was missing something. Because this was 2015, so I wouldn't have known. I had no idea about the tradition.
what kind of, when you're in the Novus Ordo, there's like the conservative or the trad or the liberal parish. Like what kind of parish were you going to?
I would say a mix. I mean,
Okay.
It was probably more conservative than liberal though, because of where it was located.
True.
Just because of where it was located in Dallas. No, I mean, no, you really had some liberal Catholic churches in Dallas. I just never attended those as much. As much. If I missed a mass, I may attend one because I wanted to do the Sunday obligation. Like, yeah, well, I'm gonna go here. Let's just hope. But no, it just really. And what really started making me think was, so at the time he was Monsignor. It was Monsignor Bob Harvard. We call him Father Bob. He then got a promotion, and our cardinal, our bishop at the time was Bishop Farrell, which is not Cardinal Farrell. But yeah, so what really got me is I took everything literally. So I took, if Jesus and if that is the blood and body of Christ, then it should be received reverently. I didn't know about, I received it in the hand, but that was, but I would genuflect before receiving. But I was told by now Bishop Robert that I didn't need to do that because I was not being uniform, which confused me. I was like, okay, I didn't want to start singing. I'm like, okay. So I didn't anymore. But I got to thinking, I'm like, but if you believe that is Jesus and you believe that he is king, because they would teach, Christ the king, Christ the kingship. So I'm saying, but if the queen walked in, you would bow your head. So if a king walks in as a man, you should genuflect. It would just be common because you genuflect before you get into a pew. Why not genuflect before you take the Eucharist? So that I started questioning it, which for me is not good because I will run a question down until I figure it out. So that went on, but then again, so the next year RCIA was starting, and I ended up being Nikkei and Harold. I ended up being their helper to help cook. So every Monday or Tuesday, we would actually meet, prep all the food, get all the food ready. So on Wednesdays, we would just meet at her house, and then we'd go and we'd start cooking it there, which would take us about 2 days to prepare meals. And this was 2015. I had surgery in 2016. In April. Well, I found out in March, that my grandmother had a terminal disease and was probably not going to make it much longer. She was diagnosed in February or March with stage 4 pulmonary hypertension, which in women, it affects the lungs. It adds water on the lungs. So she was having to have her lungs pumped from water about every month or so. And at this time I had surgery. I was flying home I was actually flying from Dallas back to Georgia about every other week to see my grandmother. And I just prayed about it, and I wasn't really feeling it. The people that I thought were friends, the people I thought were really, were really just not talking to me. They didn't know how to really do with me. They just kind of pushed me to the side. I started questioning.
These old Baptist friends from back homes, or Catholic friends from Dallas?
These were Catholic friends in Dallas.
Okay.
And I started questioning really, why I became Catholic. Because if you go from a Protestant to a Catholic, you're used to having that fellowship as a Protestant. Because we do fellowship, we have Bible studies and we do this or that with each other. But the Catholic, where I was at in Dallas, they were not, we didn't. So I would only see each other maybe once. I'd see people once a week, and then I would not see anybody until the following week. Because I wasn't able to go to church because I was on crutches. But I would have communion brought to me. Obviously, it was from a lay minister, Eucharistic minister, sorry. And so I finally came home. I flew home in July, after a wedding. So I was actually in three weddings of a friend. We just didn't have time. But the last wedding I was in was my sponsor's wedding. He got married in July. So I stayed for the wedding. And then I flew out the next week. And got home. I really, didn't have a car. I couldn't drive again. My right leg was the one I had surgery on, which is the one I drive with. So I just sat at home and would visit my grandmother. I had to have the fluid drained again. And she decided after that when she was done, that she just wanted no more procedures. And the doctor said, if we do, you'll just die. And she said, well, just send me home on hospice and I'll just die. She came home on August 20. What's the date? 24th, I think. She came on August 24th. I'm sorry, no, August 26th. August 26th, 2016. And she passed away August the 30th in 2016. So she made it. But I got to see her for a month. We got to hang out. She came home. She was able to come. And I was living there. I was living in the home which was hers. I was able to actually have a priest from a local church, a local Catholic church here, come and give her a blessing, before she passed. Again, I still don't know what traditional Catholics are. So I'm still going to the Novus Ordo, but I got into a really bad depression after she passed because she was pretty much my mom, per se. She raised me, and my grandfather passed away. Okay. My grandfather passed away in 94. So, but she's like, my mom, we talk every day from 2003. From 2003 till she died, we talked every day on the phone. So, and it was just that, I was actually into a depression. I didn't leave my house from about September to about the middle of October. I didn't leave my house at all because I had people that brought me food for the funeral, and I had frozen most of it. I didn't have to leave for food. I couldn't drive anywhere, and so. But nobody ever checked on me. Nobody ever called me. Nobody did anything. I sat there and watched TV all day, and we just go to sleep. But I think the Lord shook me and said, "You're not doing anything but killing yourself. You're not. I mean, nobody's going to care. Nobody. They're not going to come. You have to care about yourself a minute." And that's when I started going to church in Newland, St. George. And then I got involved with ushers, so I was an usher for a while. But just again, there was just a feeling, and everything had to do with a feeling for me, which probably shouldn't go out feeling, but I was like an insight. It was something instinctive that I did not feel. I didn't feel what the churches I were going to were where I was supposed to be. I didn't feel it. I mean, it was such a weird feeling. And I went there probably to 2000. This is 2016, so 2019. So 3 years. I was there for 3 years. But still was questioning. You would talk to the priest and he would really not pay attention. He would look out the window. And one day I just stopped talking when I was having a meeting with him. I'm like, yeah, I've stopped talking for like the last 10 minutes. I was waiting until you decided you wanted to pay attention. But did that, and in 2020, though, I moved to the Atlanta area, Marietta, Kennesaw area. Sorry, let me go back up. So in 2019, I actually started going to the SSPX. So I had heard about my friend who brought me about the Catholic Church. They called and told me about.
So you'd been going to this, started going to this church after your grandmother passed away, and the kind of cognitive dissonance in your feelings kind of weren't settled there. Something was wrong, and then you also noticed the priest wasn't very involved.
He was concerned. As long as you had money.
Oh,
he had money.
Okay. So then so you were there, and then somehow you heard about the SSPX?
Well, the same friend that told me about who was my same friend from Michigan, who was Catholic, had started going to the SSPX.
Okay.
So he told me about them, and I started going there. But I got a strange feeling about the priest there. He was just hard to describe. Again, I've noticed it. I've noticed a thing with Novus Ordo priests. If you do not have money, they don't really want to give you the time. But if you have money, they're all ears because they know that if they listen, they'll get money. And I felt like that's how I kept feeling at these places I would go. Even at the SSPX, I would see that. Oh, the Mass was beautiful. Like, I love the Mass. The Mass was probably, I never said, the way I felt going there, regardless of where it was, I felt that the Latin was what I wanted and what I was missing. And what I had thought about when I thought about Catholics was the Latin Mass was a universal Mass where it said in the same language so everybody in the world could understand it. But, and they would always talk about, and I don't mean this bad, I'm going to say it, but they would always talk about in a lot of the parishes, well, since Vatican II, I'm like, so, okay, I understand Vatican II, but you do have Jesus. He was the one who started all this. I'm not sure because I, obviously didn't know about Vatican II, never studied it, never thought about it, but I was like, they keep bringing this up like it's the second coming. And I was driving about 2 hours to Mass, to this SSPX Mass, which I enjoyed it. And I got to where I was having an issue and the priest brushed me off. Literally, I was trying to talk to him about a serious situation that was happening. And he just brushed me off like it was no concern of his. I was like, I'm not going to go there. I can just do this at my house. But I started going to another parish there in the Kennesaw area where I was living, St. Catherine's. So I'm getting closer to where we are now. So St. Catherine's, I went to there, but again, there was something missing. There were good sermons, there were good things. And then, the whole sickness started, trying to figure out the word to say, in 2020. And then I started questioning, well, why? They're like, when they started shutting the churches down, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense because I'm like, I can see Protestants doing it. They do it most of the time. The preachers does it. They will have to close church, or somebody else will speak. But I'm like, the Catholic Church if you're a true church and you say you are, and I'm pretty sure it didn't close during the Spanish flu. Pretty sure it didn't even close during the Civil War in most places. You just did around it. But they started closing churches, but the SSPX still did it. They did it outside, which was fine because Georgia did not have a really strict law. They just said you couldn't be inside. Outside was fine as long as you were separated, which I don't know why at that time it was nice and cool outside. I don't know why churches just didn't say we're going to meet outside. But that really got me to question. But then came the whole.
So you can say you're still Novus Ordo, but you're leaning towards those traditional services, the traditional mass that's offered by the SSPX. So you're kind of finding out about the true Catholic faith before Vatican II, but you're still with the Novus Ordo going through SSPX.
Right. Yes. But then, at this time I was going there, but again, I was getting annoyed by the priests. I was like, okay, I'll just go to St. Catherine's, which again, they were having confession outside, which was great. And they were doing, and they closed their church for a while, but then the priests finally, I think, decided to start doing it outside on their huge field, which was okay. So that was fine. Doing that, I was there for 21, 22, so I was there for 2 years. So I went there for 2 years and just, it was the same things, just had some, issues, was just lost my car, wasn't able to drive, was having some health issues. So I didn't go every Sunday, but I would do my rosary, I would do my prayers and things of that nature. So I tried to keep the day holy, even though I wasn't going. But then I was told, well, you need to be in church because our church teaches that. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me now I need to be in church, but you told me last year that, it's okay to miss church because we need to stop spreading something. Well, I am confused. Do we need to be in church or do we need to close the churches? You can't have both. You can't say one thing over here and do another thing over here. You can't, as my grandmother would say, have your cake and eat it too. You can have one or the other. And he goes, well, that was a different situation. I'm like, no, you made it a different situation. It's the same situation. Nothing has changed. And I said, because I never understood, if we were a true church and you believe in Christ, then you would know that a person does not die until Christ is ready for them to die. There's a time for death. There's a time for us to go. Obviously, we can't permit that, and obviously they did. But my thing is there were given ways to do it. So did that for, like I said, I was there until 2022, and I felt really called at that time to be a hermit because that's what I lived. I love being myself, praying, listening, researching. So I moved home. I moved doing that. I was doing that anyway. I was doing that. So I just felt like I was living as one, basically. And I looked at under the canon law, if they go by it, 630 allows for that. You can live it either one or two ways. You can live it privately or you can live it publicly. Publicly being that you're recognized by the diocese. But it came where I moved back home and I got me a tiny house and I lived in a tiny house, about 280 square feet with my 4 dogs. And was thinking I was going to be a hermit. Was thinking I was just going to live a hermit life. Not going. I don't have a car. I don't have a car for 2 years. I was still watching mass. I was still, at that time I don't know if you know this priest, but I started watching Father Mark Beard, who was just killed a couple of weeks ago.
And what time was this? What time could you just refresh where we're at?
Sorry, 2022. We're now in 2022. I'd gone to St. Catherine's from 2020 to about 2022 when I moved home to where I was raised.
And St. Catherine, was St. Catherine a Novus Ordo parish or SSPX?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now, so moved back home, thought I was going to be a hermit, got in touch with my local priest. Now here's the Novus Ordo priest here. And we were talking, we were fine, we were great, we were looking at different things. And then I needed to go to see, I went to an FSSP because that priest had dealt a little bit with hermits transitioning over. So we didn't talk with him, so I went there 3 times maybe, and I would shoot emails, never hear back, and never hear back, and never hear back. I would call and never get calls back. So I was like, okay, well, if I'm not one of them, I'm not going to keep calling. but I felt like I wanted the Latin Mass. I didn't want the Novus Ordo Mass just because of things that I'd seen, things that I felt it was more like a Protestant service. Again, coming from the Protestant side, I could see a lot more than most people can. And I understand a lot more than most people do. But, I talked to the priest. He actually would come out and bless my house and brought me communion a couple of times. And this was probably this was probably about, Christmas. So I lived here for a year now, but Christmas, he came. It was really nice. It was really good. And then after Christmas, I applied to be a hermit of the archdiocese, and they didn't want to interview me. They were like, "We don't need to interview you. We need to see you." And I applied, and some issues came up, and they really got moved with me. So I will admit, I got called and sent them very rude emails. It was not very nice of me, but I told them if the God that you're serving, the God that if you are working for is the true God, then I don't want him, because you spoke to me disrespectfully. You disregarded my situation. They questioned my belief. They questioned a lot of different things. So I was done, and I had a letter here where they would tell me that I would not be accepted. And I finally was just like, okay, that's just an answered prayer. I look back now and see that it is. But, and I forgot to mention that when I moved to Atlanta, our Archbishop was Bishop Logan Jackson, who is now a Cardinal Logan Gregory. And I'll get more into that in our next set, some more hopefully later. But so I wasn't going to church. I was just watching Mass. I was like, okay, so I did it during the pandemic because we had to and stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to that. I watch Mass. I'll do my rosary. I'll keep the day holy. And I really felt great. I really was feeling because I could watch traditional Masses online. And I was really feeling more. So again, my friend had called me and talked to me about the parish he goes to in Michigan. I still can't pronounce the name, so I'm not going to try it. But was something that was it was the traditional Mass before Vatican II, and that the popes after Pius XII. Yes, we're technically he said we consider them non-popes. Which I had a question. I was like, okay, I don't know how you can be a non-pope if was elected, but he explained it. He talked about how and I read a lot of stuff. I actually found, it's funny because I actually found Catholic Family Podcast. I found the Catholic Wire. Started listening to that. Started listening to Father Michael Oswald and a lot of his discussions because he came from the Novus Ordo side, I believe, correct. So I started doing that, and then I talked to his priest at his parish, Father Radacki. It's in Michigan, so I don't remember which one that one is. But Father Radacki there, and he tried to call around and really, couldn't find them because, obviously I'm a good ways from Michigan here. And talked about where I was at, how I was feeling, and that I really wanted to be part of true Catholic faith. So we talked, and I gave him all my information. He called the church which I was baptized in and was trying to get my baptism certificate to see if it was valid. They never would allow him to speak to the preacher, the pastor at the time. And he said, so at that time, he was like, he called me back, was like, I would recommend that somehow you become conditionally baptized and then go through the things again. And so at that point, my friend kept calling me and he helped me through things and would send me, like I have, I've got recommendations from Father Radacki, like I got his green book where he reads that you read through and you answer questions. I was able to get his catechism for children. I also got the Boston Catechism #3, the workbook, started doing that, started reading, started really looking. And if you really look at it, there's a difference. The different, it's really about, I feel like it's a different faith.
Between Novus Ordo and the Catholic.
Catholic faith, it's very different because of what they teach and what they don't teach. So I did that, started really looking, and I thought I was going to have to go to Alabama, which was a 3-hour drive for me. well, we kept doing it, kept studying, and Father Jackie told me back and gave me the number and email, an email for Father Oswald, which is actually my priest now, because he does a mission here in Georgia, which is about an hour to 2 hours away. We're only able to meet once a month. So I went there on, told him I'd come on Easter because he was having he was doing it at a different date on Easter, so I was able to borrow a vehicle and go. So I met him on Easter. We talked about an hour, and he was just asking me questions. He was really wanting to know my background. And, I sat there and the mass was different. It felt different. It felt like I don't mean this bad, but I felt like I was home. I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. By the time I told him, I wasn't for sure if I was going to be able to come monthly. And I wasn't. I went from April to July without being able to come to the mass. Even though it's once a month, I was still not able to go. Well, I finally talked to my brother, which this is a good thing. I talked to my brother, and I don't have a car. Again, I don't have a car. So I made a deal with my brother that I just borrow his vehicle once a month to make it to mass. So starting July, so I went in July. So I was till June, so I didn't go in June. So in July, I was able to talk to my brother. He was able to let me borrow his vehicle. So I started going back in July and August. I've been there for 2 months in a row. Father keeps talking to me, and he asked me because he's wanting to do a condition of baptism, and first, I think it's first confession. So we talked, and he said he was going to keep. So I'm still studying. But Father has told me I'm still looking at it. Still have, and if I have questions, I will send him an email or something. But everything I think for me is I just love studying. It's very, fruitful for me. And so coming this October, the first week in October, I will be going on a Saturday to meet with Father. I think there's maybe one or two others that are going to go being conditionally baptized, going through first confessions and things like that in October. And then, oh, thank you. Lord willing.
Yes.
And then I have to go, I think it's I believe it's Ohio to Bishop, this went blank, McGuire, sorry, at St. Gertrude's the Great. So that, the Lord willing there too as well, because I get very anxious when I drive. I don't like to fly. So that's something that I'm having to work for and pray through. But I'm really excited because I will tell you, just the once a month and the things going there, I feel like I'm finally hearing the word of God. I'm getting what I'm supposed to get. I'm getting more meat. I'm getting more meat than potatoes, as my grandmother would say. I'm getting more meat of the message. And I'm watching, and so every Sunday I don't go. I watch St. Gertrude's online every Sunday morning at 7:30 for mass, and it's just a different feeling. I've made a couple of good friends there at the mission here in Georgia that I go to. We talk daily. They send me things to read. They're helping me to understand a lot of the things. They were born and raised before Vatican II happened, so they have a really good aspect of what's going on. So I feel really blessed to be able to do that because I kept asking the Blessed Mother, what am I to do? But the funny thing here is that I had a traditional SSPX priest tell me, well, she will bring you to the priest, the church she wants you to go to. I'm like, I don't want to really tell them where I'm going since that's where, so it's kind of interesting. So that's where I kind of am now. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to learn, especially the faith before, because it's so, from being in the Novus Ordo from 2015, so now it's somewhat confusing. It was very.
That would be a very confusing time to come into that.
Well, and I started a lot of questions too before I started going to the mission. I started questioning the legitimacy of bishops, and I caught myself saying I shouldn't be doing it because of things they would say and things they would do. Even the Pope, I'm like, okay, so if I believe you're the vicar of Christ, then I believe that you probably shouldn't say things that are untrue and sin. I'm not saying that he's not a sinful person, but I'm saying you probably shouldn't, even if you're not, even if you're not teaching in Scripture, you're still the Pope. You probably should teach the Catholic faith. I mean, it's not, for me, science. So I started questioning because I did a lot of research on things that we were told we needed to have, and I questioned the church about, abortions and were we allowed to take anything like medication, because I wanted to make sure I was living the faith. I wanted to make sure I was living how I should. If we should take medicine, either over the counter or prescribed, from companies who openly say they use fetal tissues. But yeah, so it's really great. Again, hopefully in October I will have at least have the first couple of steps down, and then I have to wait for confirmation. But it's really good. Like I said, I mean, I'm reading, I'm studying more. I'm actually, I had a lady from the church, the mission I go to, recommend reading, also. It is the Mystical City of God.
Okay. I forget her name, but by the one mystic.
Yes. So I'm reading that, and it's really good.
So to kind of wrap up this section of our talk,
yes.
You kind of sound a lot. I kind of relate to a lot of what you're kind of gone through. You sound like a very logical person who also has like a strong sense of whatever they're feeling, or the sensus fide. And I was just wondering if you I had two kind of questions. Like, do you find like kind of a new sense of peace now that you've kind of found the Catholic Church?
Oh yeah, I totally do. I mean, I don't feel as anxious. I don't feel worried. There are all these sins of the flesh that I still deal with, but they're few and far between. It's like it's a new. I know. I feel like I'm a new person. I feel like because I'm doing what I felt like I needed to do, and I feel like I'm not having to question or really wonder or try to figure out if the priest is telling me the correct things, and the more I've studied, the more I did. And I think too, what I was worried about is not being able to do communion on the tongue, because I don't agree. The more I read about and studied about the Eucharist, I felt that we as lay people, non-ordained priests, should touch it. Because I'm like, if I'm correct, and the priest's hands were anointed to touch that, then we shouldn't be touching it.
Very good. Yeah, that kind of leads in. Oh, yeah, that's my second part. Is you seem like a person who has a strong, like, if I have something in my head and it doesn't make sense, I really dwell on it until I can figure it out. And sometimes that you can cost you sleep and stuff, and also you like have a strong sense of justice or something like that. So even we are very blessed with the priests we have, the sede priests we have in the U.S., especially whatever group you get them through. They are all, it seems, very dedicated and holy men. But at some point you're going to have probably a disagreement, or there's just still lots of uncertainties with, Catholicism is hard. And especially at this time, there's lots of mysteries with our faith, with what's happened to the church. So I was just wondering, do you feel like now you'll be able to deal with these uncertainties or these things better now, or like if there's a tiff with a priest or your parish?
Yeah, I think I will, because I think that now I'm more or less have the resources to go to figure out, because if I have a disagreement about maybe something that he said or something he may have preached on, if I can go back and see where he got it. Or because my thing is, and this is probably just me, but I think that, and I also, even though I may have a disagreement, I truly believe that this man that I'm listening to is a priest, and I can respect him. Because I know that, he is. It just may be that I am not wanting to see it. And I think there's a lot of that people just don't want to see it. And that's happened to me. I mean, just say, for example, I didn't want to see that the church teaches about there's no salvation outside the church. I was, Now, I don't know the exact thing, but I mean, I've also read in a couple of my catechism, and that was hard for me to take because most of my family were Protestant. Actually, all my family were Protestants, so it's hard for me to believe that. But I also believe in God's grace, and I also believe God wills what He wants.
Yeah, we don't despair.
So
Yeah.
there's no, I mean, there's no need to worry about it. It is what it is. And I think, I just have to realize that God's in control and He's going to be the one that's going to be the ultimate maker. He's going to make the final decision. And, another thing that I really like too about this is the church talks more about the souls in purgatory. I don't even know if most Novus Ordo actually believe in souls in purgatory. They do the November Mass, but I question if they believe it. So, and I think that's good because, if my thing is if the church teaches it and we're supposed to believe what the church teaches it, especially if it's not been deemed like heresy or something like that, then, even though I don't want to believe something, if it's a dogma, then it's good to, obviously, and I always get confused because, and I was asking for the enlightenment because, is that you have dogmas and then you have teachings. Dogmas you have to believe, teachings you really don't, right? Is that how that is? Because I think that I get confused because dogmas are set down by.
You should. Yeah, as well. I'm not a priest, but you usually assent to teachings.
Yes.
And trace it back to a dog. You can usually trace it back to a dogma.
Trace it back to a dogma. Okay, that was it. Yeah, because I was thinking about that this morning because there was a dogma that I was thinking about that I was like, okay, well, it's not really a dogma, it's a teaching, but I'm sure I can trace some of this back to it. But I think too, and I think there's more reverence for our Blessed Mother where I go now than where I was.
Really?
Really not mentioned. The parishes that I was never really mentioned.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts on your journey to Catholicism or where you're at now?
No, I don't think so. But thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy being able to share my journey. I'm going to say my journey home, even though there's another story, but I think I literally am home now and feel very comfortable and feel very blessed to be able to worship our Lord where I came in our blessed Mother.
All right, this is the Catholic Family Podcast. Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for joining us. Have a good day, everyone.